Manny Navarro of The Athletic. And Manny, a lot of questions going into the offseason for Miami because they lost the number one pick in the draft. They had to get a new defensive coordinator, but it appears that the offseason has gone really well for them. And then, of course, yesterday getting Jackson Cantwell, the number one overall prospect. Is this trending in the direction where, because they were very close to, if you don't get a Carson Beck, you might have seen last year just be an anomaly. Is this trending in the direction that Mario Cristobal has promised the Miami fans that it would?
Yeah, I think so, especially from a NIL budgeting perspective. He's gotten all the financial support he's needed to be able to go out and get the kind of players that he thought he could bring in if he had the budget. Let's be honest, that's what college football is nowadays. You have to have the money to be able to secure some of these commitments from players. And Miami, for years, the real reason it was struggling behind the scenes is they weren't paying not only players but coaches before NIL became legal. And so there's been an influx of funds because the University of Miami feels, from a school perspective, that football is very important. The people in charge now that are in charge of that money feel football is important. And so collectively, between that and the money that they have at NIL, they've been able to get this thing headed in the right direction. They had the number one offense in the country last year, won 10 games for only the second time in the last 20 years. So, yes, I think it sucked they didn't make the playoff. It sucked they didn't even get to the ACC championship game. But real progress was made, and getting Carson Beck was one of those signs.
Manny, you have been in the thick of NIL and those types of conversations when it comes to recruiting since it's become, legal to do. How interesting has it been to see the reaction to a commitment like yesterday and just the way people are freaking out and flipping out over why he chose Miami? Or it's kind of crazy, man. From your perspective, since you've been pretty much since it all started, Miami's been in the mix to some extent. What's it like to kind of see the ongoing conversation, especially in light of an event like yesterday?
Yeah, I think, most college football fans just assume, and that was kind of the basis for my column today was, this is a kid that's supposed to end up somewhere in the SEC, right? A 5-star offensive tackle, a kid out of Missouri. The fact that Miami could spend enough money to be in the thick of it with him, like I said, having just 2 10-win seasons in the last 20 years and not even winning an ACC championship yet, I think upset a lot of fans. And Miami fans are upset because they're just, offended by the fact that people think it's just the money. Mario Cristobal obviously has a great track record with offensive linemen. He was one himself. Him and Alex Mirabal do a heck of a job recruiting linemen. They got 2 5-stars previously to this here at Miami. One of them is Francis Mauigoa, who's probably going to be a 3-and-done player, first-round pick. They're starting right tackle for the last 2 years. So I think, it's funny how everybody in college football gets up in arms when Miami gets a recruit like this, but everybody's paying top dollar now for these guys, man. I go to the Under Armour All-American game every year, and I talk to these kids off the record about salary. Everybody's getting paid a good amount of money.
Yeah, especially, Manny, at our age, like when you ask a kid who's 17, what are you getting paid? And he's like, well, I'm thinking 2.5. And you're like,
yes,
that's got to sting. That's got to sting right there. But getting a left tackle, I've always kind of felt too, that is maybe even more or just as important as getting that quarterback, because then you get the defensive tackles get excited and all those things, because it does appear that you are prioritizing linemen as opposed to the skill guys, which kind of, even in the down years, Miami can kind of just go get some skill guys.
For the past 4 years, we have trusted Jackery to keep us powered while on the road. The Explorer 5000 Plus provides 5,040 watt-hours of portable power, so we can move it around our house or even take it to a family member who's lost power. We've already had 3 power outages since moving, and our fridge and Wi-Fi are definitely the most essential for us. Pair it with the smart transfer switch to power your entire house off the Explorer 5000 Plus. We can't wait to take this little one camping, but for now, we're enjoying all the snuggles with peace of mind at home.
Yeah, I think you're always going to have more receivers, running backs available than you are 5-star legitimate, high quality linemen. That left tackles don't grow on trees at all. Mm-hmm. And so when you can get somebody like that, and that's what they did. I mean, they did the same thing with Francis Mauigoa a couple years ago. a kid that came to the United States from America, Samoa, and went to IMG Academy down here in Florida for his last couple of years, and they recruited the hell out of him. And I'm sure he got himself a sweet NIL deal as well to come to Miami. So yes, it's the right approach. It's really hard to get elite linemen to transfer these days, whether it's offensive or defensive linemen. They usually just end up going to one school, and they're usually 3 and done. And so I thought this was a smart approach to throw the bag at Jackson Cantwell and make sure that you secured him.
Saw the video you posted earlier today. Carson Beck looking good out on the practice field. I was just throwing it around, but looks like all signs are go that he's getting healthy or is healthy and on track, I guess, for the season here in a few months.
Yeah, I didn't really do anything much during spring camp with Miami other than standing around and watching the other quarterbacks throw and being in quarterback meetings. But this was expected. He had surgery. It's usually a 5-month delay following the surgery before you actually start throwing the football. Well, guess what? It's 5 months later. So he's throwing the football now. He will be in the summer program. And everything I've heard is that he will be ready for the start of the season. And that's a good thing for Miami because obviously you talked about replacing Cam Ward, such a tremendous weapon last year. Look, Carson Beck was a very highly touted quarterback before he and the Georgia offense sort of sputtered a little bit last year with drops and interceptions and just not scoring a whole lot of points. I think he's coming into a very good system. Does Miami have high-quality receivers? I think they've got some really talented young ones, but they need guys to develop fast so that Carson has a good supporting cast around him.
What do you think about, I know you weren't at the meetings, but coming out, straight seating, Jim Phillips, they've kind of all agreed to that now, but he did not really comment on automatic qualifiers. Mario Cristobal said he thinks the idea is stupid. I agree with him. And then Dave Doran said, well, we want at least 3 if they're going to do that. Where do you think that the ACC will they fight to the death for no numbers of automatic qualifiers, just the conference champion? Or do you think that this is the beginning of maybe a capitulation on that a little bit?
Yeah, look, they talked about this last year, right? That maybe, hey, you get 2 bids if you're the ACC and the Big 12. And the fear was always that, this is ultimately going to be dominated if you just did automatic qualifiers, that by the end of the season, you're going to have 6 SEC teams and 5 Big 10 teams all high up in the rankings. I don't know what the perfect scenario is for the ACC and the Big 12. If you just take 2 and you're sort of satisfied with that, I think ultimately here, especially if it goes to 16 teams like we're expecting, you're going to need some automatic qualifiers. You can't just guarantee that conferences get X amount of teams in every single year. To me, what I'm looking forward to more is ultimately what they do with the conference championship games, because I wrote this column last year after I went to the ACC title game and saw SMU lose. That I think for a lot of these teams, it's not worth playing the conference championship game if you're going to end up missing, especially the ACC and Big 12 teams. There's no point in playing the game if you're better off not playing and losing it. You lose that game, it can potentially knock you out. So I want to see ultimately if there's some sort of remedy to how they handle the championship games going forward in those conferences, and even the SEC, right? I mean, what's the point of Georgia playing in an SEC championship game if they're in the big dance? They'd rather have that than potentially lose and get knocked out. So I think that goes for everybody.
Well, and especially with straight seeding though, right? So I mean, you get to the end of the year, 1 through 12, 1 through 16, whatever it is. Why would anybody want to mess up their chance, especially if you're 1 through 4 right now and have that automatic bye? And if they keep, I don't know if with 16, there's no buys. With 14, there's maybe a bye, but it looks like it's going 16. So why would you want to mess up your seeding and potentially in 16 get 2 home games if that's what they do?
Right. And I think ultimately here, what those championship games should be is turn into playing games, right? Like have the teams that are fighting for that 4th spot that the SEC gets, or the 4th spot that the Big 10 gets, have them play for that spot versus having your traditional championship game. I ultimately this is about health too. Late in the year, let's not forget these guys are playing 12-game seasons. It's a longer playoff road. I think ultimately, I'd like to see play-in games versus conference championship games. Where look at Georgia, they lost Carson Beck in the conference championship game. That completely changed their season, right? So I think they'd be better off just making them play in games.
So, Manny, we know some of the kind of, I guess, concessions, the agreements made to kind of keep this ACC thing together and happy for at least the foreseeable future. There was that Clemson Notre Dame scheduling agreement that was talked about a week ago. That's apparently not folded into the actual games Notre Dame will be playing in the ACC. It's like a separate agreement. I just wondered, like, where does Miami find itself, and kind of what are they feeling as far as just all of the kind of things being done to appease people? Where are they in sort of the pecking order of maybe having their voice heard? And just, where are they, in your opinion, Miami, in the grand scheme of things with the ACC?
Well, they're thankful that they didn't have to fork out a bunch of money to go fight the ACC in court, and that Florida State and Clemson did that for them. I think certainly they kind of played it smart. Look, Miami knows that they're a valuable entity, especially when they're good, right? When Miami has a chance to win a conference championship or make the playoffs, people are going to tune in and watch them. They certainly had a reason to tune in and watch them last year when Cam Ward was quarterback. So from a television revenue, television attention perspective, they'll get a chance to play Notre Dame here a few times in the next few years as well. They have the annual game with Florida State. Hopefully Florida State gets back to being Florida State. I think as a university, the feeling is, let's see what happens over the next couple of years with the ACC. We're happy with where we're at. But ultimately, I think they have their eye on getting to one of the Power 2 conferences, because that's where everything is heading. We are headed towards a Super League, I think, in some capacity, whether or not they call it that, or just remain in conferences with interconference games like Clemson and Notre Dame. We will see what happens in the next few years. But I think Miami right now is satisfied. Like I said, they've got a pretty big NIL collective, a healthy one with a lot of private investors that are putting money into securing this roster and making them better. So, but we'll see where we are in a few years when those TV contracts make it a big disparity between the ACC and Big Ten and SEC.
Do you feel tension? I mean, in Tallahassee right now, though, because of their state, like you mentioned, if Florida State gets back to it. But if you look at Miami, just got the number one recruit. Billy Napier is killing it right now in recruiting. So is Miami. Florida State's 14th, 15th, 20th, depending on who you're looking at. That's not a reasonable pace to keep at. And the high school recruiting has been Mike Norvell's Achilles heel. And I think that's the bigger reason that Gus Malzahn is there. Not so much the play calling. I think that the play calling is a bonus, but I think it's more about closing those high school recruits. Do you sense that there, that like they're at risk of falling behind, especially since they went and put all this out on the table and said, hey, we're a brand. We're this, and then 2-10.
Yeah, I think the problem for Florida State is probably NIL funding. I don't think that they have as much of a strong base to go out and get guys the way that Miami can in the ACC. I think that's part of the issue. I think the other part of the issue is Mike Norvell prefers the transfer portal. I don't know that he has ever really been enamored with recruiting. I think, coming from Memphis and just where he's been before, you can find guys that aren't necessarily 4 and 5 stars and pay them top dollar. And so I think that's been their sort of perspective. I think Florida State's just had a different approach, whereas Mario Cristobal loves the recruiting rankings as much as he says he doesn't. And he pays attention to who the 5-star recruits and the 4-star recruits, and he pours so much more energy into it. So I think Florida State's issue is that they had a bad year identifying guys in the transfer portal. And I don't know that Gus Malzahn will necessarily fix it. I think Gus Malzahn can certainly fix the offense. I think he's probably got a better quarterback suited for Florida State to have some success this year. But ultimately, what Florida State did a couple years ago, where they were right there on the doorstep of getting into the 14 playoff, was a product of what they did on the defensive side of the ball. And I think last year, losing everybody that they did on defense and just struggling to stop the run at times, I think that really hurt them. And obviously what they had on offense, they picked the wrong quarterback out of the transfer portal. They went with DJU instead of Cam Ward, and they ended up paying for it.
Well, and that was an NIL thing too. I mean,
Yep.
I think Cam Ward came back to them and said, hey, this is what they're paying me. And they said, the beaches are lovely.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why I said NIL was a big deal for Florida State.
Make sure you get down and get a couple sandwiches down there. They're way better down there than they are up here. So sorry about it. That's kind of how it went down. Manny, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Enjoy the summer. I know we'll talk to you again soon. Do you get downtime coming up? I mean, you live in Miami, which is a downtime city anyway.
Yeah, I get plenty of time to be with my daughters, who are both soccer players, and spend some time with them as they travel around and do stuff. So I've got a good life down here. I can't complain at all.
That's right. All right, Manny Navarro, The Athletic, joins us. Thanks, Manny, for hopping on today. Really appreciate it.